A fox knows many things, but a hedgehog knows one important thing. It's one important thing. It's one important thing.
Welcome to the Morning Hedgehog podcast, where we explore the business ideas that shape your success. Here are your hosts, Ira Gardner and Glennis Thomas.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's The Morning Hedgehog episode. And today, Ira is going to be talking about what today?
Well, good question. I thought today we could talk about product development and how we start to develop a niche product that we can grow into a successful business model.
Great. Yeah, that sounds very interesting.
So when we think about product development, one of the things I get asked all the time is this idea of, are we trying to put people into a box and only do one thing? And I think to begin with, I just want to talk about this idea of this product development process that we're talking about today is something that you can rinse and repeat and use multiple times to develop a range of products, but it always has to start with that first core product offering that we talk about is your standard business offering. It's what you're known for. And so today I'm going to just kind of walk through this product development process that we can apply at any time in our business life cycle to develop and refine the products and services that add value to our customers. So I'm always going back to this idea that our career is really centered around the people that we engage with, the team that we build up, the business processes we design, and ultimately the products and services that we develop. And so this is one of the really three foundational areas of your business. And what we're going to talk about today is how do we develop your core product? And then how do we go from that niche core product into developing out, scaling out that product a little bit by developing a product mix? And then probably we'll wait until our next episode to talk about developing our pricing structure and sales goals. But you'll see how all this interconnects together. And so when we start to develop our product, we're really also going to be taking a look at our business model spreadsheet to figure out what our price points have to be successful. And so we'll just kind of go through all this together. So I usually am presenting this to photographers that are fairly new to the industry. And I always talk about the fact that they are sitting at the very best point in their career to be innovative. And I think about when I first started out, I was 19 years old, got my business license, and I was at the best opportunity to innovate because I wasn't yet dependent upon making a living from photography. I had my survival job. And also knowing that my competitors that are more established tend to have a mindset of you don't fix what isn't broken. And when we talk about paradigms, most times when there's real foundational change in our industry that due to innovation, most of the existing professionals get cleared out and make room for new photographers come in unless they're aware of the paradigms and they become very flexible. And frankly, if you're an existing business, going back to this process to make sure you're staying in alignment with what the industry and what your customers need at any given time, because those needs change over time. There can be all kinds of changes in culture, changes in technology. And so really we're going back to zero. And in Zen, we talk about the beginner mindset. And so with our product development process, we start from ground zero and know that we're in the best position to be innovative because we're starting over.
This makes so much sense to me because I think it's also a part of you don't know all the no's yet. Because I think about when I worked in the corporate world and I worked at different ad agencies or different companies, I was always my most creative within the first few months of working at that company. And I remember somebody saying to me, well, that's just not possible. That's not possible. And I'm like, why? Why must you limit yourself here? And her comment was, well, you just don't understand yet. You just wait a few more months and then you'll understand why we can't do any of those things. And I just thought she was so wrong. But this is a great reminder to do probably every year for every type of business, to make sure that you haven't gotten stuck in all those limiting beliefs of what isn't possible, and repeating things for too long that becomes stagnant. So this is a great refresher for me.
Thank you. In an upcoming episode, we're going to talk about the life cycle of a business.
Okay.
And generally, what happens is established businesses, they end up getting to a mature business status, and they're so fixated in their paradigm of how they do business. Well, this is just how we do it. This is what we've always done. That they begin a very slow, painful decline unless they go back to zero and investigate how they can be innovative. So the first step towards innovation is to do a SWOT analysis that looks at our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and our threats. And so one SWOT analysis we can do is we can look at our competition in our marketplace and see what we might be better than the competition, and ways that the competition might be better than I am. And then we can look at the ways we can compete and turn our weaknesses into strengths, and then look for trends that could negatively impact and become a threat to you in the marketplace. And I always give an example of this, of how when I first started, I did a competitive analysis, and I started out doing commercial photography. I was not a portrait photographer at all. In fact, I didn't want to photograph anything that could talk back to me. I was young and I just hadn't developed that comfort level. I was more technical and I wanted to photograph products. And I used to, as a child, draw construction. I used to love watching construction sites in LA, and I'd watch all the workers. And so I was more interested in industrial and commercial product photography. Well, when I first started out and I did my SWOT analysis looking at the competition, my weakness is I didn't have a nice studio. I didn't have a lot of lighting gear. And the top commercial photographers had these beautiful studios with all kinds of lighting, and just they were phenomenal places for them. And so when I looked at what opportunities that might exist for me, I realized that I had an opportunity because I wasn't fixated with being in my studio. And it's one of those things, if you build a nice studio, you don't want to leave it. I didn't have a nice studio. In fact, I started out working in a basement apartment with a Murphy bed, but I had a station wagon that I could load my gear. And I remember watching that television show Paladin that says, "Have gun, will travel." It was a gunfighter thing. And I thought, well, I'm a photographer, have camera, will travel.
Yeah.
And I turned my weakness into an opportunity by going out to the manufacturing businesses in the industrial parks and promoted this idea that I would bring the lights, the background, camera gear to their site so they wouldn't have to transport their expensive products to my studio. And I developed relationships with companies where I would go set up for a week at a time and do all their catalog shots for their product catalog. And I ended up making a living and doing really quite well at it for my first 5 years. And so I also at the time looked at potential threats, which at this time was the fact that photography and graphic design work was now moving to desktop publishing. And so this idea of needing specialized color transparencies and color separations, looking at where the trend was going, I knew there was going to be more in-house design work happening. And so I decided early on that I would invest in a computer and a computer scanner, and I would learn how to do color separations myself in order to be able to augment my service by saying, hey, I'll not only do the photography, but I'll also scan it and do the color separations and do the press proofs for you. And then ultimately I ended up adding some design services to where I could actually design catalogs and product sheets and brochures. And so by analyzing the competition and organizing it around my weaknesses being transformed into opportunities, I was getting paid 3 times for one job. I would go out and get paid, number one, for the photography, number two, for the color separations, and then number three, I had had a job in college working for a printing shop, and I learned how to bid on and price printing. And so I got paid a third time for actually selling the printing and getting a commission on that. So that's how I made my living my first 5 years as a photographer, was doing this sort of SWOT analysis. The other thing that we have to do is we need to do a SWOT analysis to start to define what our photography identity really is. And this is where we start to make a list of jobs that we feel qualified to do, and a list of jobs that we're not qualified to do. And then in terms of opportunities, maybe there's some jobs that I'm not currently qualified to do, but I would like to become qualified to do, and I'm willing to invest in learning how to do it well. And then there are the jobs that are just going to ruin my reputation because I'm not going to do a good job, because either I'm not interested in it, or the price point for that product or service is too low for me to be able to make a good living at it. And this is where I keep hearing horror stories about photographers that get hired on a low price point, that end up turning around and taking shortcuts on what they actually deliver to their clients. So that's a huge risk in my book. It's a real threat to your reputation. So just looking at the list of things that you're qualified to do and the list of things that you would like to become qualified is really important. And then learning, I will tell you, the most important word in business is the word no. Saying no to the jobs I either am not interested in doing because I just won't do a good job if I'm not thoroughly committed to it, or saying no to jobs that I am not qualified to do. And I'll just share a really great story about this. Is I used to, when I was first starting out in commercial photography, I would actually call in-house marketing managers at these manufacturing companies, and I'd say, can I buy you a cup of coffee? I'm a new photographer. I'm working on my portfolio. Could I buy you a cup of coffee and take a look at the kinds of photography you're doing, so I could maybe get some ideas on how better to develop my portfolio? It was a very low risk, and most of the time people said, sure, I'd be happy to. And I'd set up these meetings, and I'd go take a look at the photography they're doing, and I'd show them some of my work. It was a great way to show my portfolio around. And invariably I'd get a call back saying, it was nice meeting you. Would you be interested in bidding on a project? And I remember one project in particular that was this large manufacturer that manufactured the equipment that turns raw aluminum into soup cans. It turns raw materials into packaging.
Mm-hmm.
And their machines were they would take up this whole warehouse, and they asked me if I'd be interested in bidding on some new, they had a new machine that they were just getting ready to ship out to a client, and they wanted a photo of it. Well, I had met with them. I saw the work that had been done for them by this great photographer who I knew at the time. And I just told him, I said, to be honest with you, you're better served by going with the photography you've been working at. This job is too big a scale of a project for me. I would be wasting your time to even ask you to consider hiring me. I don't have enough lighting gear to do this job. And I don't have the experience to do it well. And the gentleman on the other end of the phone said, thank you very much. I appreciate it. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from another company saying, hey, I got your name from so-and-so, and he told me you wouldn't waste my time. I'd like to find out if you'd be willing to do a project for me. And it was a project I could take on. And so I got word of mouth referral, not for work I did, but for work I turned down, because I kept it within my structure of what I knew I was capable of doing. And I think that's a big part of understanding who you are as a photographer.
Excellent. It's part of exceptional customer service too, when people know that they can trust you to not lead them down the wrong path.
Yeah. And, the interesting thing is, if you get known for doing one thing, really, really well, you're going to have a lot of people ask you to do a wide range of things. And it's going to be up to you to set those boundaries of what can I do well and what can I do. And I don't be afraid of turning somebody away, because they'll actually end up bringing you the business that you're more qualified to do if you stick to these parameters. So now we're at my first real recommendation for all of our viewers today, and that is this book by Alan Dibb called The One-Page Marketing Plan. I'm just going to share one little piece of it that I think is really relevant to today's conversation, but I highly recommend this book because basically for every product I develop, I use Alan Dibb's one-page marketing plan to launch that product. And it's really a great way to just organize and simplify getting things to market. And so I highly, highly recommend this book. What I really appreciate this is, first of all, this is in the kind of the early part of the book, is this idea that making a niche product helps make your pricing irrelevant. And he uses the example of when you go to a specialist, a heart specialist, do you really worry about how much they're charging? And by specializing, you're becoming a much more valuable photographer than trying to do everything and be all things to everybody. By specializing and using the steps that we're going to talk about today, you're going to augment your products and services every step of the way to make it this amazing experience that your competitors won't be able to offer. And when you do that, then price isn't the point. It's the value in a fair exchange of value where you get to command a much higher price. And I think it's important to command a livable wage pricing. So I really love this part of Alan's book. And then he answers one of the most difficult questions photographers have. What do I specialize in? How do I narrow it down? Because the camera allows me to point this tool at any subject matter I want to. And I could do landscapes today and I could do portraits tomorrow. And you tend to go in all these different directions. And most photographers starting out, and in fact, some will pride themselves saying, well, I'm a generalist, I don't specialize. And that's because they haven't really gone through this development. And I will tell you that if you want to do a wide range of things, that's no problem. Just go through this process multiple times. But by the time you go through this process, which takes, by the way, 6 months to a year or more to do right, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But if you go through this process, you develop a deep expertise to be able to offer a niche product at a very high level. And when you're ready to add a new product or service to your repertoire, really you're diversifying your portfolio and you haven't forgotten your skills that you've learned in this product development process, and you haven't abandoned the services and the levels of customer service that make it special. But just know when you're first starting out, you need to pick one thing. And you need to spend a minimum of 6 months to maybe 3 years honing that one standard business offering, that one core product. And so what Alan has done is helped photographers or any business narrow down that initial niche offering by looking at 3 factors that help us make that decision. The first factor being personal fulfillment. How much do I enjoy doing this kind of work? How rewarding is it to see my customers happy when I do this work for them? How fulfilled am I? And then the second criteria is to look at what's the overall value to the marketplace. Are people willing to invest an adequate amount of money to make this a profitable business? Or is it something, for example, I will say landscape photography is very challenging to do well. It's not that it can't be done well, and I can give you multiple case studies of photographers doing great landscape photography. But for people just starting out that don't have all the business acumen to do it well, I like to point out that landscape photography is something that people give away for free every day. So how do you compete against free, right? Mm-hmm. And then profitability, how profitable is this market segment? And so when we look at these three factors, we're able to rate them. And humans are really good at just kind of making guesstimate ratings on a Likert scale. So if I took those three categories and I took a range of product segments, genres of photography, if you will. And so in his example, in his book, he talks about a photographer that he worked with that was trying to decide between weddings, photojournalism, corporate photography, and family portraits. Well, if you rank those on a Likert scale of 1 to 10, and then add up your total score, you can see where you're going to lean towards and be best suited for. And it's not best suited by any one criteria. It's not just based on the value to marketplace, not just based on profitability, but it addresses that personal satisfaction piece as well, that helps people figure out what should they start out with developing first as a niche product. Any thoughts about that?
Yes, what was swirling in my head was how a lot of us sometimes just figure this out just through a lot of trial and error, versus this really just puts the numbers to it that you can see. It's just so logical. And it makes so much sense. And in this example, the personal fulfillment on the corporate photography, which is what I've been doing in terms of headshots, I can totally understand for a lot of photographers, the personal fulfillment's pretty low. And I sort of laugh about when I did my first corporate headshot job, how much personal fulfillment it gave me, which I found surprising. And I stumbled upon that not realizing, but yes, I would rank that quite high for myself. But all of those things, it just makes so much sense to me now that I've just hit my 3 years in business mark. These are things that I organically figured out. And which makes this information make so much more sense to me. I don't know how much I would have understood it in the beginning, but it would have been correct if I had filled it out at that time. But anyways, I'm thinking about how I'm going to go, I know I think you mentioned this book before, but I'm not sure. I remember us talking about the 1-page business plan, unless you said marketing and I didn't make that connection. I've not read, I don't think, this book. I think I read the 1-page business plan. I'm not sure, but regardless, even if I did, it's been so long, I'm definitely going to check this out again.
Absolutely. And we'll put this in the show notes. But a couple of things that came to mind when I was thinking about, one, I felt very lucky that when I first started out, I pretty much knew what I wanted to do. And I think that's really one of the keys to success that I've seen in the photographers, the students I work with. The ones that really know what they're going to do have a sense of direction that is drawing them towards being more successful. But that's okay. Most of us don't start out knowing what we want to do. And I've worked with a lot of photographers over the years that just like, I don't know. I want to do this, that, and the other thing.
Or we think we know. And then with experience and time, we then realize, oh, wait a minute, this isn't, and I actually prefer this better. It's all just part of the process and the journey.
But you mentioned this idea of most photographers go through a process of trial and error. And what's so challenging, what I want to help people avoid is when you go through the process of trial and error, how many errors can you afford to make before you go out of business? And so I want to offer up a more safe way to do trial and error. And that is when you're developing a product or service, I recommend, and if you want to experiment with different genres of photography, I recommend you give it away before you start charging for it. But you do it in a special way where you establish the value of, hey, I would like to do this for portfolio development purposes, but I need you to understand the value of this work would be at this price point. And if you refer any customers to me, please notify them that this is the price point that this service would be at. But I would then offer up to do maybe, if it's a headshot business, I'd probably do the first 5 headshots for free for portfolio development, and create some sort of an ambassador program that says, hey, I would like to work with you as an ambassador. I'm doing this product development. First, I'd like to do a photo shoot. If you like it, great. I'd like to sign up for a referral service. And then here's the price point that I'd like you to be able to communicate to your friends and colleagues. And the idea is that I'd rather give it away by establishing the value of it as part of the giveaway than to charge less than what it's worth. I'd rather not discount it.
Absolutely. Well, and then it takes off, if you're still discovering this, I think it takes a lot of pressure off of you to give it away, and even if you do discount it, whether you discount it or give it away, I actually recommend giving someone an invoice.
Yes,
like you would
absolutely.
a regular customer, and you say, here's the actual price and here's how much you're paying, and that can be zero.
And have them sign it as a delivery memo.
Right, because people believe that you are worth whatever you charge them.
Yes.
And so if you give it to them for free, and even if you verbally say, but really I would charge this amount, that will help a little bit. But I think actually giving them a document, having them actively sign it, helps them to understand the value of it. And if you're just still trying it out and you're still trying to build a portfolio, you might still not believe that price yourself either. This is a great way for you to start getting used to that price point. And I know we'll talk about pricing later.
Mm-hmm.
But you really have to establish what's going to be actually profitable. And there's a science behind figuring that out. But there's also the other part for those who feel like that price is too much still. They don't come from this as necessarily a business background. Then so doing the portfolio, giving it away for free or highly discounted, having people sign off on it, and people start to see that price, and you get accustomed to saying that price,
yes,
is going to set you up for better success later on.
So we have just given some great advice about how to go through trial and error without the errors costing you your reputation in business. And the other thing I like about essentially doing pro bono work while doing the product development work is that I feel a much greater sense of control over the final product. I get to do it my way. I get to decide what the final results look like in a much more controlled way than if I am getting paid to do it and I feel obligated and nervous to try to meet some external standard that may not be in alignment with who I am. So this gives me the opportunity to experiment, have total control, give it away with these parameters of establishing the value and having an invoice and showing what that would be. And then I'm also doing a market test, because basically what's going to happen is I'm going to find out whether or not somebody really likes the work I'm doing by whether or not I get a referral, whether or not I start getting calls for this work. So that's an important part of product development, is finding out if there's actually a market for what I'm doing based upon, are people excited about it? Are they sharing it? And am I seeing word of mouth referrals come back to me saying, hey, I'd like to hire you to do this work. So this is kind of a really nice little mini segment of product development that we're talking about now.
Yeah, that's super.
So getting back to product development, this graphic that comes from a website, marketingteacher.com, I really like the idea of this bullseye target, and it looks at a product as having really 3 levels to it. You have your core product, which is really the benefit to your customers that relates directly to your mission, which is the purpose for being in business. This is the value proposition I'm offering to my customers. This is how I'm transforming their lives. This is how I go from saying the words, I do this kind of photography, to saying I help people with this product and service that I'm developing. So your core product is the benefit. The actual product is the actual product and services and packaging and the process that you use to create and fulfill those orders for your customers. And then the augmentation of the product is the customer service. Now, just a moment ago, you talked about one of the challenges in product development is price points, or people trying to figure out the price point that they need has to be sufficiently high that they're not sure that they can make the product be worth that. And that's where augmenting the product through customer service and creating this one-of-a-kind unique experience. My number one question I actually ask anybody that's concerned about price point is, what am I going to do to be worth it? If I know that I have to generate, say, let's just say I need to generate $1,200 for a headshot. Well, now I can work backwards and go through this core product, actual product, and augmentation, and think, what can I do at every step of the way to be totally worth $1,200? Because I guarantee you there are photographers that will charge $10,000 for the same basic product, but their augmentation of how they do it is so amazing that they're commanding that higher price point for that niche market.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we think of it in terms of just how good the photograph is. And so we're pricing it based off of that piece of art, but that is just part of, I mean, how well you deliver, the type of customer service that you offer, how well you're able to collaborate with your client, hear what they're saying, how well you're able to flex and meet certain needs. I mean, there's so much more to that pricing than just the actual photos that they're going to get in the end. And sometimes I sort of think of it as, don't price your photography, price your service.
Absolutely. Yes. And in fact, I was just talking with somebody just yesterday about this idea of really the difference between a McDonald's hamburger, a hamburger in a gastropub, and a hamburger in a 4-star restaurant is not the ingredients, it's not the food, it's the ambiance and it's the service. And so, you know, just I love playing this game. What if I did want to charge $10,000 for a headshot? Well, I wonder if I set up a studio, maybe it's even a once a year event where I rent a location at some exotic, maybe we go to Barbados or Tahiti, and it's a CEO retreat, branding retreat. And we do CEO portraits to establish the brand and ethos of the head of those organizations. I bet I could charge $10,000 for it. Now,
sure, yeah.
I would have to do a lot of things to develop my credibility, and it's going to probably take me 3 to 5 years to build up to be able to charge that price point. But I could do it. And I'm convinced that you can design a product that meets whatever price point you need it to meet if you focus on the relationship between the product category, the actual products and services, and the workflows you use to create the customer experience with your overall branding strategy and marketing to create the environment, the ambiance, the experience that justifies the investment that is this, you know, incredible experience that people can't wait to brag about. They just had this amazing thing. And I look at other businesses, I look at hair salons. People are paying $200-$300 to get a haircut. Why are they willing to pay for that when they can go to Great Clips and get it for $20? Well, there's this whole other aspect of product development that gets into branding, gets into services, gets into ambiance. And, you know, your studio environment is part of your marketing plan. and creating these experiences. I mean, I remember for a while I was getting my hair cut at a salon that offered a full spa service. So you got to spend up to 3 hours before or after your haircut sitting in hot tubs, saunas, and the rain room showers with like 10 shower heads, and you could add a massage, you could augment it with a massage, and it was a spa treatment, right?
Right.
So what kind of spa package are we putting together for our photography clients is one way to think of it.
Yeah. And I almost wanted, I mean, I know you talked about all those different aspects, but in a way, if you were just to overly simplify it, I would change maybe from saying price your service to price the experience. Delivering and actually having the photographs is part of the experience as well. The like in terms of headshots, the feedback that people get from their coworkers and their family is also part of the experience. So it needs to be a good photograph, and it needs to be true to who they are. But certainly everything that happens from the moment that they decide to contact you till when they're starting to get feedback, that's all about the experience. And as long as you can deliver on a great experience, you can charge for that great experience.
So thinking about changes in society that change service, just about everybody is using some form of video chat now. And I start thinking about if I were doing wedding photography and I'm photographing an event, looking forward down the future, I would be thinking about having a premiere event where all these guests that traveled to this event would be invited to a premiere event that we would arrange with the bride and groom to reveal the photos to all the guests that were there.
Oh, I love that. Instead of just sending out the link.
Instead of sending out the link, you get to orchestrate the experience, and then can you imagine documenting that, making a recording and putting that as part of your marketing to get the gasp, the ahs, the laughter, the memories.
Oh,
it would be amazing, right? So this gets to another hedgehog concept. Do something hard to be worth it. Go to the extra. It's extra work to do the sort of innovative technology. To be innovative, it takes more work. You're gonna out hustle. But if you do it and you do it well, you can charge a price that makes the return on investment totally worth it. But the problem is if we don't think about it in the beginning stages of product development, we won't build it into the workflow. Right? If I had thought about that before, like if I just thought about how am I going to present my photographs to everybody at an event, I could have thought of this 6 months ago and it would have been really revolutionary. Now it's going to be a little late. Everybody's going to do it, but it is adding value of bringing and connecting people together. I mean, I remember doing a family portrait in my studio that involved family from all over the country. And I remember we put on a pizza party because a flight from Atlanta got delayed for like 3 hours, and people didn't have their hotel rooms yet, and they didn't want to leave and come back. And they're like,
right,
guess what? We're throwing a party. Let's make it a party. Right? But if I had thought of that ahead of time, I would have sold that as a destination family portrait where we just build in catering into it.
Sure.
Right? So this is the sort of strategic thinking that we're talking about when it comes to product development, is anticipating and thinking about where can I provide the best customer service along the way.
Thank you for listening to the Morning Hedgehog podcast. For show notes or to submit a question or comment, please visit www.themorninghedgehog.com.